big thing that came out this week is Resident Evil 7.
Yeah.
It's always kind of funny when a game series is churning out that many games, and you're like, oh, 7, that's a lot of games. And frequently at that number, you're like, this isn't a great thing. But in this case, it sounds like Resident Evil 7 is like the really, it's a return to form, and
It's simultaneously, I feel, like a return to form and a step in a brand new direction for the franchise that I believe after 6, most would agree, it desperately needed.
Right.
So it is a good time to even launch a game like this, by the way. Like I feel like so many games were coming out towards the end of the year, even stuff like Last Guardian, which came out like early December. We were just starting to get fatigued and overwhelmed with the amount of games. And then things opened up a little bit for 2017, and Resident Evil 7 is kind of the first big game. I expect we're going to see this chart very high on the NPD.
Yeah, it's doing well. I mean, people know what Resident Evil is, and hearing that it's actually like a scary thing again is good news.
But more importantly, it's reviewing really well.
Yeah.
So we're going to run through some of the more notable review quotes. It obviously from the top of the spectrum to lower and lower, but even IGN, which gave it a 7.7, that's very good on our scale. So let's get into it. Guardian gave it a perfect score, or the highest score they can give it. It's a masterclass, breezily new, yet quintessentially in character with its illustrious forebearers. And I want to point something out about this game that I'm finding more and more as I'm connecting with it. If you play the first hour or so of this game, you're probably like, oh, this feels kind of like Outlast or something like that. Like it's another first-person survival horror game. But then you start interacting with guns and weapons, and there's item combinations, and you go to open your first door that has a very obtuse like animal head logo on it, and you're like, this is Resident Evil. It took a while to sort of prove that to me, but it's totally Resident Evil.
You said something I really loved about it, how basically the original Resident Evil games, you're in this mansion where it's supposedly a bunch of rich scientists who are secretly doing bad evil things, and it doesn't really explain why you're doing like, oh, here's the shield key. Like I guess it's sort of eccentric old architecture.
Or Resident Evil 2 when you're in a police station. It's like, what kind of cops would set up like a key that you need like an animal's eye to open up?
It's always had the kind of the ludonarrative dissonance of these silly puzzles, but in this case, you're in the house of a bunch of crazy backwoods rednecks, and they're like, yeah, put the cat's head on top of the cat corpse and that'll open the door because we rigged it up that way because we're loons.
Because they're crazy, paranoid, like backwoods nightmare people. And like you'll get to like the scorpion door, and in the old games it would have just been like a bronze scorpion on the door, but this one has just this like fat taxidermied scorpion, and then like 20 more all hung up by little strings glued together, and you're like,
so gross.
This is nightmare art.
Yeah.
Like, I love it.
I want to play this game, but at the same time, I really don't. Anyway.
I think you should inch through it.
Yeah.
Destructor gave it another perfect score. They said Resident Evil 7 went beyond my expectations, and I feel we have an instant classic here. I want to jump back in right now, and I have a feeling I'll be doing so for years to come. I was just talking about this game with Alana Pierce, who's our toy editor here at IGN. She also totally adores it, and what we're finding is that some of us are having completely different experiences in the way some of the sort of more stalkery characters approach you or don't approach you. Marty and Alana played through the game a little bit on the live stream for IGN the other day, and were stalked by this character named Jack. And then she went and played it again, and the guy didn't show up at all. So my experiences with it going left in one room and finding him there, and going in a different way and not seeing him at all, are different than what other people are having. So I think there's a random element to it, which
that's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah,
I love that.
Totally inspire multiple playthroughs. And if you're an old school Resident Evil fan like me, you know that the original Resident Evil, which again happened with Remake, rewarded you for beating the game faster and faster and with certain sort of priorities in check. If you beat it in under 3 hours, you got like an infinite rocket launcher and stuff like that. So I really hope stuff like that comes back. It'd be cool to run around this house with an infinite rocket launcher.
Yeah, that'd even the odds.
EGM gave it a 95. They said this is easily the best Resident Evil game in years. It masterfully blends Eastern and Western horror sensibilities into a truly terrifying package that also harkens back to the series' roots. This is an actual legit scary game. There's some of you probably in the comments being like, I'm not scared of anything. Dude, you're tough. Good for you. Work out in a mirror like the kid in Little Giants because you did it. I'm scared of this game.
All right.
It's a scary-ass game, but I love playing it because it gives me some sort of feeling.
Yeah, those old curmudgeons at Polygon said it's hard to know if Resident Evil 7 will stand the test of time as much as classics like the original or RE4. Taken on its own, however, it's an excellent game that pushes the series in worthy new directions. They give it a 9 out of 10.
Yep.
That's this is all good buzz here.
Yeah, new directions is a good thing. Like I said,
New Directions sounds like a rehab.
I think it's a 90s R&B group.
Yeah, good stuff. Game Informer gave it an 8.5 or 85. I don't even even know how they do these things. Blah, blah, blah. This new vision doesn't reach the same heights of spectacle and gameplay innovation as that breakthrough release, but, comparing it to Resident Evil 4, but it's a welcome addition to the series, both in terms of gameplay and lore, and a nice entry point for newcomers. That is always a key thing with a series as kind of long and storied as Resident Evil, or Final Fantasy, or Metal Gear, is having a jumping on point,
Yeah.
Where do you start? Because the games theoretically keep getting better as they make more of them, technologically, but story-wise, stuff just piles up.
I think it's like if you jumped into Resident Evil 5 or 6 and it was your first Resident Evil game, it's completely insane. It's nonsensical, illogical, just lunacy. Basically.
You know what would be really cool is if they took this approach to Resident Evil and basically remade one of the other ones, but in an entirely different perspective with different puzzles and everything.
Right.
But just changing the perspective that much would be nuts.
Quick tangent, but a guy on YouTube, and I don't have his name in front of me, but he actually modded Resident Evil Remake for GameCube to be entirely first person.
Huh.
Which is insane because that game has pre-rendered backgrounds.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do we got next here? Giant Bomb says, Resident Evil 7 features just the right amount of modern twists mixed into the traditional formula. May not reach the same heights as the industry changer like Resident Evil 4. That's a very high bar, like a top 3 game for me. But it certainly ranks among the best entries in the series. So I think that that idea of new ideas and sort of classic horror and not coming together in a weird tropey way is what's really helping this game.
Yeah.
The tropes that this game leans on are stuff like Texas Chainsaw Massacre rather than I don't know, Insidious or any of this sort of there are just a lot of, we've had a big resurgence in horror movies the last few years, and a lot of this sort of I don't know, little kids' toys and the voodoo dolls, all that kind of stuff. It's very hokey. So this is a little more grounded, even though it's made of weird mold mud people.
Good stuff. And then finally, IGN, that's us. Our pal Chloe Rad reviewed it, gave it a 7.7, which apparently is the equivalent of hating a game, according to the internet. She still really liked it. She said it's also the closest numbered sequel has come to recapturing Resident Evil's slow but thrilling and atmospheric adventure game roots for a while. A welcome return. I truly hope to see more of in the future.
And that's the thing. I think when we do see Resident Evil 8 now, and this is what I hope going forward, right? This game is a triumph. It's a victory. Capcom nailed it. I want the lessons that they take from this, I want them to take it into the future and in a well-balanced way, because I don't want the characters in this game to return the next game with cybernetic eyes and you're punching boulders and Wesker's in the basement again, and the shark, almost practically literal shark jumping nonsense that happened by halfway through the Resident Evil franchise the last time around. I hope we get away from that.
Yeah.
If Resident Evil now represents a guy goes into a house and has to survive it, there are so many good ways to do that without it all sort of connecting back to the T-Virus, G-Virus, lore of Umbrella, and all that kind of stuff. So, kudos to Capcom. I love this game. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't wait to play more, and I hope they make a sequel pretty soon.